the big news of the weekend. Let's talk about it. House versus NCAA has been settled. I feel like I first brought this to the attention of our audience, I want to say in about January of 2023. Does that sound about right?
I feel like that's when the first inklings of it were first dropped.
I know for a fact it's been a main topic of discussion on this network since you two have gotten microphones.
Yes.
So we've at least been talking about it since August of 2023. I think our audience, based off the conversation and the literal discourse I've seen in our Discord, our audience, I feel like, is really, really educated on what is going on with this settlement, why it was important, when it was coming down, what it ultimately was going to lead to, and the fallout or the repercussions of this settlement are exactly what we kind of forecasted it was ultimately going to be, right? A $2.8 billion settlement that will be allotted to players that played college football from 2016 until now. Okay, that does not include the 20.5 annual rev share that we're going to talk about here in a second. That's the settlement for players previously. Now, my question is, I played some D2 ball for 2 years, 16, 17. You think I get some bread? Probably not. Maybe.
You might even get some eligibility.
$2.6 billion, they got some money to throw around. There's probably going to be some people that don't file the right amount, right paperwork to get their bread, which means maybe I get some of mine. I doubt it, though.
What do you think? What would you be happy with if you
I don't know if they pay me $1 a win, I get 7 of them hoes. We didn't win a lot of football.
$7.
Buddy, we did
in this
not
economy?
Win. Oh, yeah, in this economy. I can't even buy a McDonald's meal.
No.
They're garbage. Garbage.
You get about 2 gallons of gas.
Maybe. Oh, kill that sucker. You got him. You got him.
Nah,
he's yours, dude. He's yours right now. Oh! Did you?
Oh, he's right there.
Did he?
You got him.
He did. That a boy.
Impressive.
Yeah,
That a boy. That's good stuff right there. Anyways, back to this. $2.8 billion being paid out to previous college football players. Here's the important groundwork for what's moving forward in college football. $20.5 million annual salary cap for the 2025 and 2026 calendar year, okay? That will inevitably increase year over the next decade per the reporting that I read today. The majority of college football programs that are major college football competitors, okay, they have already, most of them, come out on record saying they're going to spend about 16 of that 20 on football in and of itself. Now, that's the salary cap, okay? That's the amount of revenue sharing dollars you are allowed to allot to your student athletes on an annual basis. $20.5 million is free play. You can go out and pay for play any athlete you want with that $20.5 million. It's free. You can go do whatever you want with the school. You obviously have to take it out of your athletic budget, but you're able to do with that whatever you want. Now, the next question that comes off of that is that's the salary cap. What about this NIL stuff that we've been going on with for years in years prior? What about these collectives? What about these massive amounts of dollars that have been pulled together and have been thus satisfying the pay-for-play need for these athletes over the last 3 or 4 years? Well, from now on, that's going to have to pass through something called NILGO. Okay, what is NILGO? That's that company Deloitte we've been telling you about for a long, long time. Okay, any deal north of $600, any amount of income registered to a student athlete north of $600 will have to go through NILGO, and this company will ultimately deem whether or not that deal is quote-unquote passable. Okay, NIL deals moving forward are going to have to be, quote, real. You're going to have to go to events. You're going to have to actually make marketable dollars, okay? From my understanding, guys, when NIL was first rumored in like 2018, 2019, this was supposed to go through some type of clearinghouse. There was supposed to be, hey, you can't just give Jimmy a bunch of money because he goes to your school. Jimmy's going to actually have to do something for that marketing dollars, for those marketable monies. It's name, image, and likeness, not I committed to Texas A&M. I committed to Georgia. Give me my money. That's not how this is going to work moving forward. Any tangible dollars are going to have to go through NILGO, which is basically the Deloitte company. Also, and I know we're going to open up for questions. Hold them for just a second because I know there's a bunch of them. Also, there's been a CEO named out of all of this. Everybody's been talking about college football needs a commissioner. Well, they just got one, but they really didn't get one. We're calling him the head fed around here. That's his entire job title based off what they released today. His name is Brian Seeley. He used to work for Major League Baseball. He is Tony Petitti's buddy. Okay, Tony Petitti, the CEO or the commissioner of the Big Ten. My man Seeley, from the exact release today, quote, this is his job title. His job is to build out the organization's investigative and enforcement teams and oversee all of its ongoing operations and stakeholder relationships. Seeley and his team will also be responsible for enforcement of the new rules around revenue sharing, student athlete, third-party name, image, likeness, deals, and roster limits. In other words, my man Brian Seeley, head fed. This is the man who's going to come up after you if you break these rules they just put into place.
I mean, it's a fun nickname, but that literally describes exactly
that's what he is. He's the head fed.
He's the head fed of this.
And that's why I'm glad they put it in terms, because we laughed on this network for years, all you goofies saying you want to be the commissioner of college. No, you don't. No, you don't. They're going to cook you and fry you as a fan base. Your likable image, it doesn't exist. It won't exist. You're there to hold people accountable for breaking rules. Everybody loves to support the blue until they get a speeding ticket. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. This is the guy whose job is to sign the speeding tickets and throw your ass in jail when you overexceed the limits and the rules. Ain't nobody going to like this guy.
No. Knew it all along. Nobody likes to be told what they can't do.
Hell no. And I'm glad, like I said, they came out and said, this man's the head fed. If y'all going to hate anybody, hate this guy, he's the one that's going to slap your program with a bunch of lawsuits. All right? So there's that. So in short, let me culminize everything that just happened, okay? We got a head fed named Brian Seeley, whose job is to hold college sports programs to a $20.5 million salary cap with legitimate means of NIL additives, okay? And the salary cap will inevitably increase year over year, as most salary caps do, okay? Now, that being said, there's a shitload of questions, I would imagine.
A whole lot.
Mm-hmm.
So let's start lobbing them, and let's see if we can get them figured out.
All right. Let's start with the biggest one probably. Is this finally going to provide sanity to this sport?
So here's what I love most about this. Even if I don't necessarily love that the head fed is best friends with Tony Petitti, I like that at least we got somebody. Mm-hmm. At least we have a governing body attempting to do right and wrong, attempting to govern right and wrong, attempting to put some type of lanes and guardrails on the sport, and implementing some type of salary cap. At least now there are rules that you have to attempt to circumvent. Whether or not you can circumvent them, I haven't come to figure out, right? I don't know yet if this is going to be bulletproof. We'll talk about that a little bit more here in a second. But at least now we got somebody. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean?
Right.
We're not just wild west in this thing knowing that the NCAA can't do shit because Tennessee keeps teabagging them in open court.
Yeah, I don't know if it's going to provide sanity per se, like immediately fix everything, but it's certainly a step in the right direction to where back in the olden days of the NCAA, it was kind of just they were basically diminished to this powerless being because they were, like you said, sued into oblivion. So it's definitely a step in the right direction. And also, I don't know if college football has ever been sane.
Yeah.
Like the ways that recruiting was done, the way throughout the entire history of the sport, the 2 centuries, has always been insane. Like there's always been some level of insanity to the sport, which kind of makes it so great. I'm just glad there is, like you said, a step in the right direction.
Yeah, I think at the very least the thought process of everybody is put under like somewhat of a level playing field, or at least the fact that you can't exceed past this X amount of dollars. The fact that there is some type of dollar sign next to everybody and it coincides with everybody, I think that's what at least provides some type of sanity of knowing, oh, okay, like every school has this threshold no matter who it is, and you can't go past this threshold.
I think my next question to that would be is who's a winner in this situation? What teams are stamped today? Okay, we have this model coming,
CEO.
They're winners.
You skipped the question.
I thought we talked about the CEO.
No. What do we think about the CEO? We talked about him. What do we think about him?
My bad.
What do you think about my man head fed Brian Seeley?
I mean, like him as an individual, what is he really going to do? Like I feel like he's just a face that's plastered on this because it's not going to be Seeley sitting in a dungeon all day long, like siphoning through all of these NIL deals and making sure, like calling up people saying, hey, that's a big no-no. You can't do that. All right. Like he's really just the face of all of this, in my opinion. So what I think of him, I think it's great that we have a face of this.
All right, so I got I think Bill Simmons would call this a half-baked take. This one's been sitting in the oven for a little bit. It's rising a little bit. It's not quite ready, but I'm going to deliver it on you anyways.
Let's hear it.
I'm sure he's more than qualified, Mr. Seeley, Mr. Head Fed. I'm sure he's great at what he did with Major League Baseball. It sounds like this guy was like the head investigator for Major League Baseball, to which I mean, not to make a joke, but the biggest investigation in the history of Major League Baseball was actually completed by the internet, and that was with the Houston Astros. So their investigative team must not have been that great. John Boy has a career because they're not that great at it. So just not to shit on Buddy. Sure, he's great at what he does. Sure, he's more than qualified. However, this is coming from Mr. SEC Homer, by the way, so buckle up. This is Tony Petitti's best friend. This dude worked with Tony Petitti in Major League Baseball. So to just summarize everything that has gone on over the last 12 months of college, let's go 24 months of college football. The Big Ten has secured the biggest TV rights contract in the sport by a considerable margin, about $15 million per year per school. They have the biggest conference in the sport. They've won the last 2 national titles, okay? And your commissioner, Greg Sankey's been standing up, taking every PR loss known to man over the last 12 months. Everybody hates him right now with when he stands up in front of a microphone. And Tony Petitti's ducking all of that. And his best friend's now the decision maker in the sport. SEC's little bro. SEC is little bro right now in this sport.
Ooh.
You got to take the most shots at the guy with the most sustainable armor.
See, I'm not like trying to hold any water for the SEC here because I don't care about it as a conference, but that isn't definitely an interesting take. Historically, recently, it sort of appears that way, but at the same time, I feel like I don't know how much of a backseat the SEC is going to take because of this.
Now when I heard this news today, I told you straight up, going to 9, Bubba. Like, you're going to 9 conference games. Whatever debate you got, whatever power you think you got, if there is hey, who's going to make the decision? Let's let the CEO make the decision. He probably going to lean in favor of the Big Ten.
Most likely.
I mean, if indeed the ties are as close as I think they are, which, again, he ain't Greg Sankey's former colleague. He's Tony Petitti's former colleague. So, just a thought.
I mean, what I think a good hypothetical would be, though, is if they do go to 9 games, would the SEC just not look at their 3 or 4 contenders annually and say, okay, we're going to give them the cakewalks this year? Georgia, Texas, Alabama, okay, you guys get Vanderbilt, you guys get Mississippi State, any other team that's been Kentucky. This is your SEC slate now.
Yeah.
In response to that, I don't know. But
it's just interesting. I'm just watching. I don't believe it, by the way. I still think the SEC is way deeper. I just got into a huge argument with a former Oregon player that's in the NFL, my man George Whitaker. We just got a knockdown drag out on his podcast about how the SEC is way deeper and way better and way more competitive top to bottom than the Big Ten. I totally, solely believe that. However, the decision-making power is tilted. It is officially tilted slightly in their favor.
Yeah.
So the half-baked take is your little bro. The reality is they got an upper hand. Even if it's a small one, they've got a small upper hand.
For sure.
So there's that. You asked a question about who wins.
Yeah, who's the winner?
Who wins in this? I personally think anybody that didn't start a culture of selling the soul and overplaying players. Or overpaying players.
Yeah.
Overpaying players. Anybody that wasn't out here wilding is going to be fine. So immediate names that pop into my head, Clemson. Clemson's a huge winner out of this.
Clemson's a poster child of this.
Clemson's a huge winner out of this. I think Georgia. I think Ohio State has not had to go crazy. I think they've been fine. I think Texas inevitably will be fine because they started winning. Had Texas not won over the last 3 years, I think they'd be in some, not trouble, but I think they'd have to start it from, not scratch, but like do it without being able to overpay for athletes, which is hard to do.
That's true. I think Texas is probably the best beneficiary of the, quote, NIL era, but that can also coincide with the fact that you hired Steve Sarkisian and things got a lot better for you once he's got his program fully rolling. So I don't know if the success is directly tied to NIL. It certainly hasn't hurt them.
I wonder if any of you guys are going to hit the macro take here. Who do you got as a big winner?
Would you classify Penn State as a winner here?
I don't know because they just took private equity money, which we're going to get into in a second. I don't know if Penn State's got enough FU money to where this is okay. To where they're $21 million hit. We can take that. I don't know if that's one of those programs.
I mean, maybe Tennessee is a winner out of this because they escaped out of paying Nico even more money, and then this would have came down the path.
The easiest answer here is the fans.
Oh,
well, if this actually happens, if we can actually govern this sport, I think it helps the fans more than anything. I think we return to some sanity in this sport.
How's it? But what ways does it help the fans though, other than just
general retention? I think this will help out for general retention of your roster as well. I don't think you're going to be able to just say, "Oh, I'm a Pitt wide receiver. My name's Jordan Addison. Oh, USC can now all of a sudden pay me triple, so I'm going to go over there." I don't think that's going to be able to happen.
So you think fatigue is going to decrease in that?
Yeah,
regard, to where
yeah.
We keep losing these players
And donor fatigue, like that's a real thing.
Mm-hmm.
Like the idea that there are wealthy people in the southeastern states that are constantly getting called by their favorite football team for more and more money. Now, they might continue because the responsibility for, like, for example, stadium renovations might go back on, graduates and fans now.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not going to be funneling money so we can get the new Jimmy, So there's that. Who loses?
I have a take on this.
Okay.
I don't know if there's necessarily a massive loser in this because you look at, like, the teams that were traditionally big spending and just going way over the limits that we agree on. And how they're probably not going to be able to do that anymore. But it's not like they benefited from this majorly. I mean, Tennessee is a team we talked about how obviously the Nico story is iconic at this point. It wasn't like Nico Iamaleava was a massive payoff for them. It wasn't like Tennessee won national championships and won SEC championships based on this model. Same for USC and Miami. Like, they went out and got a lot and paid a lot for these recruits. It's not like their on-field product got any better. So the idea that they're not going to be able to pay these recruits, it's not like things are going to change that drastically for them than the way they acquire talent.
There's only 2 contracts that we know of right now in the sport that I think are now, if they are real, and if you actually put them through Deloitte, and if you actually put them through the revenue sharing model, and if they are what they say they are, you are at risk or have way too much money allotted to a player who's not going to impact your team enough. 2 examples. One's obviously Mark Bowman.
Yeah.
If you're giving a tight end $8 million, you're screwed.
Absolutely.
There is no way. Okay, your salary cap is going to be all tilted towards a position that is not impactful enough. And honestly, if you're giving Bryce Underwood $10 million over the next 3 years, he better be a Heisman winner.
Mm-hmm.
He better be
Big
a Heisman
facts.
winner because the rest of your roster is not going to be good enough. However, I would imagine Bryce Underwood's money, a lot of that's coming from Oracle.
Yeah.
A lot of that's coming from Barstool. I don't know the situation with Mark Bowman.
Yeah, but and again, that's kind of my point. It's not like Mark Bowman elevates USC to a national championship contender. Like, we even talked about how this could be a contract done to USC's detriment. Like, you're overpaying so much to where it might hurt your roster elsewhere. So it's not like you could look at it inadvertently. USC's helped by this. They're a winner because they've now people forcing them to stop overpaying ridiculous prices for talent.
Well, they won't get the talent. That's the theory now because
Yes.
they're only getting it because they're overpaying. I mean, but we don't even have to look at – I mean, USC is an obvious example of this. I think for USC, you just get as much front-loaded as you possibly can, promise as much as you possibly can, and then hope that by year 2, when these rules are actually implemented, which we're going to get into in a second, that Mark Bowman can actually market himself to a $3 million annual salary that he's currently prorated at, and we can get most of that off of the salary cap and most of it into real NIL money that can go through NILGO, and Deloitte approves. That's the plan. But that's wishing in one hand and shitting in the other one. Tell me which one fills up first. You know what I mean? So there's that situation. But we don't even have to do it with USC. There have been reports that say Texas has a $40 million roster. Mm-hmm. If that's true, they're going to have to go find $20 million of money that can go through NILGO to hold up their roster.
Right.
Or else kids are going to be looking around saying, hey, buddy, I came here because you told me I could make X, and you're paying me W. We better find this here delta or I'm going to get the fuck about out of here.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that was going to be my point is, doesn't this kind of give a school like Oregon almost a major advantage or potentially give them a major advantage?
I think this gives schools advantages that have legitimate marketable companies.
Yeah.
Legitimate companies. So you can't tell me that Deloitte's going to go tell Phil Knight that a tight end that he's doing commercials with ain't worth $700,000 a year. For that matter, I don't think, and this leads us into our next question about does NIL go and does Deloitte actually have power? There is no way on God's green earth I think some company is going to go tell Barstool and Dave Portnoy that the quarterback's not worth $1.5 million to do 3 podcasts a year. It's his money. If he thinks the kid's worth it, the kid's worth it. Mm-hmm. Oh, but we sell merch. You know what I mean? Like they'll justify it however they want to justify it.
Yeah.
So what I do think this removes is the idea that we've got 70 collective boosters that make $750,000 a year, and we're pulling $8,000 a month from all of them because they love the Dogs, or they love the Aggies, or they love the Longhorns, and we're just going to pool all that money together and then divvy it out to our athletes. That is removed. However, if Zaxby's wants to give JT Daniels $300,000, then go ahead. Maybe he can sell you some chicken fingers. So that, like, to answer your question, the next question is, will Deloitte actually have power? To answer your question, I don't know.
Yeah.
And no, none of these coaches know either. I get two types of coaches. I get one coach that says, how are you going to tell me what somebody's worth? How are you going to tell me what I can do with my money, whether or not that's market value? Who gives a shit? I'm paying it. If I overpay, you can't tell me whatever. And then I have another coach that says, oh, you just wait. Deloitte's going to just absolutely slap the shit out of the first team that violates this so hard that everyone's going to throw up their hands and go, ain't no way I'm doing it.
Yeah.
Ain't no way I'm doing it.
I think that the one way that this is going to be enforced, and it's similar to how it was done in the NCAA, you can't tell people how much you can pay them. Obviously, you know, if X company wants to pay a player this amount, you can't stop them from doing so. I think what happens is you enforce it on the player. It goes back to the NCAA suspending players for receiving payments for signing jerseys and things like that. The guys that sold the merchandise and paid the players to do so never got punished, but it was the players that received these funds that were outside of the rules to which they could do is where the punishments come in. So I don't think that you're going to have Deloitte telling people what they can and can't pay, but you're definitely going to have Deloitte saying to the players, you can and can't accept this money.
And for the audience's knowledge alone, like what Deloitte is apparently what they apparently have is like a 20-year sample size of marketing deals signed by athletes. So if you bring in there a deal that says, hey, I'm making $170,000 from the local car dealership, and they look down and say, well, you know, A-Rod only got $110,000 back in 2018 at the local New York dealership, so no, you can't make that much. Again, I don't know how that doesn't get thrown into court. I don't know how that player doesn't look at them and say, how are you able to tell me what I'm worth?
Because I'm sure that there's going to be contracts in this to when you sign with these teams and you
play college
you
football,
are agreeing that
they have power over you. They have a governing power.
Correct.
Over you. I would hope so.
That's got to be what these new signing days are going to entail, where you basically get signed from this, and this is the amount that you are agreeing that Deloitte, whatever powers that be, can have control over what's a fair market value for you as a player or you as a representative for your name, image, and likeness. You get name, image, and likeness payments now, but there is a cap to it, so we don't have these companies just blowing up money out the ass to get you $5 million necessarily.
So there's an elephant in the room. Let's point at it. If Deloitte and NILGO actually have power, we know where we're going back, right?
Where's that?
Backdropping.
Oh, Mr. Bagman.
Oh, they're back, baby.
Mr. Bagman's. Oh, his
Manziel.
His stock's
a lot of
roof.
lot of football players are going to be opening laundromats.
Ain't no doubt. We gotta get some cash dropped off. Y'all better figure out how you gonna launder that money though. That's tough. 200 thou wow in cash ain't easy to clean.
No.
We'll be buying a lot of vehicles. You know, they don't take cash payments for houses, do they? You can't just walk in and say, hey, here's $100,000 in a duffel. Here's my down payment for this house. It has to go through a wire transfer, correct?
I'm pretty sure, yeah. I've never tried it.
The houses that I've purchased, wire transfers. Maybe there's some cash folks out there, but I don't believe so.
I've never tried. But yeah, no, I mean, that's going to...
We're going right back to it.
But again, that's fine. Like, no one was... There were complaints.
That's fine.
Like, oh, look.
Cheating.
They're always going to cheat. You're never going to stop cheating in this sport. There were complaints about how recruiting was ran 20-plus years ago, 25 years ago, and how, certain teams cheating. They bought that player so-and-so. But at least there was an understood uniformity of, okay, at least there's this rule that everyone has to follow in the baseline. And there were some other teams with, McDonald's bags or $20,000 in a duffel bag on a visit.
And back in the day, when there actually was a governing body that felt like they had some type of power, because prior to NIL, the NCAA could actually sanction people.
Yeah.
Really, pre-COVID, they could go out and slap people with trouble. Obviously, Tennessee knows this to be the case. But back in the day, they self-reported way better than they obviously can't self-report now because no one can go get them. But college football coaches tend to govern themselves. It's almost like the Autobahn. You know?
Well, I mean, it's because I think they lived in an era of the NCAA, and like Mark Richt even made a joke about this, Todd Gurley, where basically like Mark Richt found out eventually that, the NCAA doesn't have as much power as we thought. But coaches lived in such fear. It was like, okay, if I don't report this, they're going to come for me and the entire program as a whole. So I have to sacrifice this one player and get him suspended, or I'm going to get, quote, the death penalty.
Yeah, see, I don't think Mark ran in the circles that some of the corner cutters ran in, if you know what I mean.
I agree.
Like the Mark Richt coaching tree wasn't out here McDonald's bagging.
No.
You know what I mean? There was one specific coaching tree that knew how to do the bag game really, really well, to the tune of like I think 7 titles.
Yeah.
And then everybody else around him figured that method out as well. And then NIL came around. But now that we're going back to that bag method, some of them old recruiting hounds are probably going to get back to the top. Yeah.
And I think that revolves in the big circle of college football of there was never parity. There was never going to be parity. There was always haves and have-nots, even with this. And people thought the NIL was going to be the evening of the field. And, now these lesser schools can pay players to get there. That was never going to happen.
Yeah.
There's always going to be haves and have-nots of college. So the Browns, the Jets, teams are always going to – there are some things that are never going to change in the sport of football, and teams getting richer is one of them.
My question, I think the most important question for a lot of schools is like, do you have to basically now have to pick a sport to compete in? Like the days of you being able to be national championship contenders at multiple sports out the window.
I think
Don't schools kind of already do that though? Like they kind
explain. Well, I guess Auburn's down in football right now, but up in basketball. But they're spending money on recruiting in football. So one's got to give. You know what I mean?
I think it does become interesting how you have these, quote, everything schools. Like Tennessee's a great example of this. Tennessee is going to have more of a strain on providing for their football team simply because their baseball team wins and their basketball team wins.
Yeah.
Like if you're Georgia, you can look at your basketball team and go, hey, Mike, listen, just get to the tournament every year, make a deeper run in the SEC title, and you're good. Baseball, maybe do a little better, but like teams like that, they're going to allocate more to the football team that is actually going to be producing. It's going to be very interesting to see how teams measure out what they pay for and what they don't. And I think you're right. I think you do have to kind of choose what you're going to put all your chips in on.
At least like if I give you less revenue sharing model, I have to work to get you more marketable deals that pass through NILGO to get to the number that is required to win. That's simple math. So I do think the talent gap in football is not we're not gonna change. But I think the haves in college basketball, the Syracuses of the world, not to an extent North Carolina, because Belichick's there now, and part of his contract is that he was going to get 16 or 14 of the $20 million. So they're about to be worse at basketball than they already currently are. But like a Duke, you think Manny Diaz is getting what the other ACC schools are getting on this 20.5? Probably not.
Yeah.
But that would make Duke far better than like an Auburn. Right? You would think they'd have much more to play with than an Auburn.
Yeah, I mean,
even though Auburn's been way better at basketball over the last several years than Duke.
So it plays into the conversation that we got into about how we kind of revert back to what we knew. Like you could revert back to what you knew of basketball, where Kansas, Duke, North Carolina maybe right now. They did just hire Bill Belichick, so we'll see about that one. But like your typical basketball schools that
Michigan
you envision,
State,
yeah, like those schools, like. They were the ones that were always good at basketball. It might return to that, but the bigger point is what happens to some of these other basketball programs to where you still may not even be able to compete with these schools because they're allocated more money than you are now.
I mean, I guess we'll find out real quick if some of these guys are taking other jobs, you know?
I mean,
if Bruce Pearl's leaving Tennessee, if Rick Barnes up there at Tennessee, if he dips out, we know. We know why.
Yeah.
And I just don't know where they're going to go. You know, there's only so many of those basketball jobs.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of the old adages of the rich get richer, to where, you know, we're going to see the teams that are have traditionally been basketball schools that might not as well be known for football. Like Kentucky's going to get much better at basketball, you'd have to believe.
Found you guys years ago and wasn't a fan. Now I'm here as a certified ball knower and giving back. Drew Aller's overrated and go Dogs. Kevin Waltman going onto the board. Yeah, we're very parasitic in that form. You know, like people. Sometimes you walk up on us like, ugh, I don't like those guys, and then the third or fourth time you're like, whoa, this little. It reminds me of that, like a great white shark has that animal that swims up underneath him. And I would imagine that first time that guy popped up, that great white shark was like, God, this guy's annoying. And then you realize, hold on, he's serving a purpose. This guy's cleaning up all the takes. This guy's making everything make sense.
Is that your new spirit animal?
No, still the buffalo. Let's go add Kevin Waltman to the board.
Let's go.
But do you think you have to pick sports basically to compete in?
I would think so. I would imagine. I mean, you have to pick something that gets more than the other, right?
I feel like the answer to that is yes, but it's also not going to put that much more of a strain. It just constricts the budget in areas. Teams were having to do this anyways. They didn't have unlimited money. They weren't just printing money to spend on, okay, yeah, we can spend this on basketball, we can spend this on baseball, and we can spend whatever we want on football. Like, you had to balance a budget again. It's just that your bottom line is now changed to where this is the amount that you can use. So I don't think it's necessarily going to change things that much for programs, as much as we think at least.
And speaking of change, most of the people that I've talked to thinks this will go most into effect in the 2027 recruiting cycle. Okay, so most of the 2026 deals have been front-loaded, and I think they're going to get grandfathered in, if you will. I think it's the terminology that most people are using. So I think most of this will impact player acquisition strategies in 2027, not necessarily this class. So that really just points to teams like USC. I think USC is going to hold on to what they got going on. Now, how they hold on to it the second year those kids are on campus, don't ask me. Okay, that's a question for Lincoln Riley.
And you would think, though, that the agents of those players would be smart enough, though, to have those conversations, right?
Yeah, just preparing them. Like, hey, you're either going to have to work really, really hard to market yourself year two, or we're going to have to go somewhere else.
Okay, yeah. I just hope that that's what's happening.
Yeah.
I would hope, at least. Or at least the school is being honest about it, too.
You're funny. You think used car salesmen are honest about the Carfax?
I can blindly hope about it.
That's a crime. You can't do that. You can't forge Carfax.
You know. I know you've seen Tires. Of all people on this stage right now, you've seen the Netflix series Tires.
Right.
Would you put it past a used car salesman to maybe skirt the rules just a tad?
Oh, yeah, they're definitely skirting the rules. That's not Carfax. It's a crime.
Also, should be noted, there's like 17 teams, it's probably climbed even higher, that have already announced they're taking private equity money. And to put this in layman's terms, it seems to me that the almost $21 million that are going to has to come out to be competitive in athletics is now going to have to be replaced by a private equity firm loan in order to continue building and repairing facilities.
Oh, boy.
It looked to me in the reporting that I saw that people are taking money from private equity firms in order to continue their stadium renovations, continue the construction on campus, continue all of this stuff. In exchange, the private equity firms are then going to market those buildings. So you're going to start seeing logos on fields. You're going to start seeing stadium names being sold. You're going to start seeing more than just Pitbull by FIU Stadium. You're going to see a lot of this moving forward.
Yeah. So you're going to have athletic directors calling up Dave Ramsey, huh? I have a $30 million loan, Dave. How do I get rid of this?
Dave, this private equity fund out of Texas is on my ass right now.
How do I save the UCLA Bruins, Dave? Tell me.
Dave, the books have been read for 150 years. How do I turn them green? That's the craziest thing to me. Look, I don't claim to be a brilliant person, but I do have a master's in business. And for the life of me, I can't figure out why a private equity firm would look around the landscape of the economic stature of this world and be like, where is our greatest opportunity for a return on investment? I got it. College sports. Those athletic departments are crushing. They constantly turn in the green, right? Wrong.
No.
Black. Years in the black. I don't understand this.
Black is profit.
In the red, excuse me. In the red. Don't understand this. For the life of me, can't get it.
I mean, they know something we don't, I'll tell you that.
The Dave jokes classic.
I'm laughing at the Auburn going to be rocking Yellowwood color rush jerseys.
Dave, I have $20.5 million a year to play with. Really only about 16. I gave 4 of it to a freshman tight end. What do I do?
Dave, what do you think about Mark Bowman? How much would
Dave,
you
I need your
invest
help.
in this?
Well, sir, do you have any expensive vehicles? Not really, but I do have a tight end that hasn't stepped foot on the field quite yet.
Sell it.
Might be a first-round pick.
Sell it. Pay off the debt.
What's the ROI? Nothing really.
We don't know yet. He might get 800 yards. The most I've ever had at tight end is Mark Andrews.
Damn, it is, isn't it?